If you're enjoying this story of corporate revenge and personal redemption, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in Dana's journey. The boardroom of Apex Nova's headquarters gleamed with polished mahogany and stark minimalism, a testament to the company's sleek aesthetic and cutting-edge reputation. Dana West sat ramrod straight in her chair, the culmination of 6 years of innovative work as chief systems architect represented in the presentation materials before her. Her hands remained perfectly still on the table, despite the tension crackling through the air. 13 pairs of eyes were fixed on Marcus Hale, the new CEO, whose arrival 3 months ago had brought a swift and merciless restructuring. He stood at the head of the table, his custom Italian suit as sharp as the smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As you can see from the quarterly projections, Marcus continued, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of someone who believed his every word was worthy of recording for posterity. Our modular system platform is performing beyond expectations. Dana's gaze flickered to the slides displaying figures she knew intimately. The system's success was her success, the culmination of countless late nights, sacrificed weekends, and relentless innovation. The system that had transformed Apex Nova from a promising startup to a tech industry heavyweight worth billions. However, Marcus said, his tone shifting as he turned toward Dana, to maintain our competitive edge, we need to implement significant changes to our leadership structure. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Dana felt the collective attention of the board shift to her, a mixture of curiosity and uncomfortable anticipation washing over her. Ms. West, Marcus continued, not bothering to hide the satisfaction in his voice, your contributions to Apex Nova have been noted. However, your resistance to our new vision has become problematic. Your position has become redundant, effective immediately. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Dana registered the shocked expressions of several board members, the carefully neutral masks of others, and the poorly concealed smirk of Marcus's recently appointed CFO. 6 years. 6 years of her life devoted to building the heart and soul of this company. Dismissed in 23 carefully chosen words that stripped away her identity and reduced her to an obstacle. Dana slowly gathered her tablet and notebook. Her mind raced with everything she could say, points she could argue, achievements she could list, allies she could call upon. But instead, she simply rose from her chair with deliberate calm. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady and clear. Just 2 words, delivered without a tremor or hint of emotion. As she walked toward the door, her heels clicking rhythmically against the hardwood floor, she felt Marcus's confusion. He had expected tears, protests, perhaps even a scene. Her composed exit was not the reaction he had prepared for. What no one in that room knew, what no one in the entire company knew, was that exactly 2 years earlier, Dana had registered the patent for the modular system under a separate entity, a precaution taken after observing the company founders pushing out early employees once their innovations had been secured. The intellectual property that Apex Nova assumed was theirs, the system valued at one point $1 billion, had been licensed to them through a shell company Dana controlled, with automatic renewal contingent on her continued employment. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Dana allowed herself a small smile. In 24 hours, the license would automatically terminate. In 48 hours, the system would begin to fail during the most important investor presentation of the year. She stepped out of the building into the bright sunshine, removed her company badge, and dropped it into a trash can. As she walked away from the towering glass building that had been her second home, she didn't look back once. Chris Dalton's office at Ardent Dynamics overlooked the harbor, a deliberate contrast to the urban jungle where Apex Nova's headquarters dominated the skyline. The space reflected its occupant, comfortable yet professional, with framed engineering patents alongside family photos. When his assistant announced Dana's arrival, Chris immediately stood, genuine warmth spreading across his features. They had worked together for 3 years before Chris left Apex Nova, unable to stomach the direction the company was taking. "Dana, this is unexpected," he said, gesturing toward a chair. "I heard rumors about my very public firing," Dana finished, settling into the offered seat. "News travels fast. Too fast in this industry, Chris agreed, studying her with concern. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, Dina replied, opening her tablet. I'm here to discuss a business proposition. Chris's eyebrows rose as Dina laid out the situation. When she revealed her ownership of the patent, his expression shifted from surprise to amazement. You're telling me that Apex Nova's entire operation hinges on a system they don't actually own? They had a license, Dana explained, which expired the moment Marcus terminated my employment. By this time tomorrow, their system will begin failing in very specific ways. Chris leaned back, whistling softly. That's either the most brilliant insurance policy I've ever heard of, or the most calculated revenge? Dina offered with a small smile. Perhaps both. But I'm not here to simply watch Apex Nova crumble. I'm here to offer Ardent Dynamics exclusive rights to the patent. For how much? Chris asked, instantly alert to the business opportunity. $1.1 billion, Dana stated calmly. The same valuation Apex Nova placed on it in their last annual report. Chris's laugh held both amusement and respect. And they just handed you this leverage on a silver platter. Incredible. He tapped his fingers on the desk thoughtfully. Our board would need convincing for that kind of investment. I anticipated that. Dana nodded. I'm prepared to provide a complete demonstration tomorrow when Apex Nova's system begins to fail during their presentation to Southeast Asian investors. And your role in all this? I assume you're not just selling and walking away? My condition is that I join Ardent Dynamics as Chief Advisory Architect, with a 5-year contract and appropriate equity stake. Chris studied her for a long moment before extending his hand. I always said Apex Nova didn't deserve you. Let me make some calls. As they shook hands, Dana felt the weight of the past 6 years begin to lift. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her value on her own terms. The Apex Nova investor presentation was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, with representatives from 12 major Southeast Asian technology firms in attendance. The potential investment would secure Apex Nova's expansion into the fastest-growing market in the tech sector. Marcus Hale stood on stage, exuding confidence as he walked the audience through impressive growth projections. Behind him, the company's signature blue and silver logo pulsed gently on massive screens. And now, Marcus announced with practiced enthusiasm, a live demonstration of our proprietary modular system, the backbone of our operation, and the future of integrated technology solutions. In a private viewing room 3 floors above, Dana and Chris watched the live stream alongside Ardent Dynamics CEO Sarah Chen and 2 board members. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. On screen, Marcus gestured dramatically, and the main display transitioned to the modular system interface. For 30 seconds, everything functioned perfectly, showcasing the elegant design and intuitive operation that had made it revolutionary. Then, exactly as Dina had predicted, a small error message appeared in the corner of the screen. Marcus continued speaking, unaware. Within seconds, another error message appeared, followed by another. What's happening? One of the Ardent board members asked. The license verification protocol is running its authentication sequence, Dina explained. Finding no valid license, it's beginning a systematic shutdown, preserving data but restricting functionality. On screen, Marcus's presentation derailed as the system began failing visibly. The confidence drained from his face, replaced by confusion, and then barely concealed panic. A minor technical issue, he attempted to reassure the increasingly restless audience. Our team will resolve this momentarily. But as he gestured frantically to offstage technical staff, the system continued its predetermined shutdown sequence. Error messages multiplied until they filled the screen, culminating in a final message that caused audible gasps in the presentation hall. License expired. Please contact West Point Innovations for renewal. In the viewing room, Sarah Chen turned to Dina with newfound respect. West Point Innovations. Your company, I presume? Dina nodded. Established 2 years ago for the sole purpose of holding this patent. And they never bothered to check who actually owned their core technology? One of the board members asked incredulously. They assumed, Dina replied. In an industry built on intellectual property, It's a surprisingly common oversight. On screen, the presentation had devolved into chaos. Investors were leaving their seats, assistants were frantically making phone calls, and Marcus stood abandoned on stage, his career visibly crumbling before their eyes. "I believe," Chris said with a satisfied smile, "that Apex Nova's stock is about to take a historic dive, while their chief systems architect is conveniently sitting right here with us." Sarah Chen studied Dana thoughtfully. "You orchestrated this perfectly, Ms. West. The timing, the audience, the impact." She extended her hand. "Ardent Dynamics would be honored to acquire this patent and welcome you to our leadership team." As they shook hands, Dana felt no triumph or vindication, only the calm certainty that her work would finally be valued appropriately. Not just the technology she'd created, but the woman who had created it. The calls began at 8:17 the following morning. Dana sat in her apartment's small home office, watching her phone light up with Apex Nova numbers. First HR, then the legal department, then the CTO's direct line. She let each call go to voicemail, sipping her coffee as the messages accumulated. By 10 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. Peering through the peephole, she was surprised to see Richard Oakes, one of the original founders of Apex Nova, and still a major shareholder, though he'd stepped back from day-to-day operations 3 years earlier. "I should have expected you'd be the one they'd send," Dina said as she opened the door. Richard's normally jovial face was drawn with stress, his silver hair disheveled. "May I come in? This isn't a conversation for hallways." Once seated in her living room, Richard didn't waste time on pleasantries. "The board is in emergency session. Marcus is trying to save his job by claiming you stole company property. That would be difficult to prove, considering I filed the patent before Apex Nova ever implemented the system," Dina replied calmly. "All properly documented and legally sound." Richard ran a hand through his hair. "The company is bleeding money by the minute. We've had to shut down operations in 3 divisions already." "I'm aware." "Dina, whatever your grievance with Marcus, and believe me, I understand it, this affects thousands of employees who had nothing to do with your termination." This gave her pause. She had anticipated this argument and prepared for it, but hearing it from Richard, who had always treated her with respect, still struck a chord. "The employees will be fine," she finally said. "The company has more than enough reserves to weather this transition, and I've ensured the system preserves all data. Nothing will be lost except time." "What do you want?" Richard asked directly. "Name your price to reinstate the license." Dana leaned forward. "It's not about price, Richard. It never was. It's about recognition and respect. Marcus didn't fire me because of performance or redundancy. He fired me because I questioned his strategy of sacrificing quality for short-term profits." "Then come back," Richard urged. "The board will override Marcus. We can restore your position, increase your compensation, give you more autonomy." Dana shook her head. "That opportunity passed the moment Marcus decided I was disposable. I've already reached an agreement with Ardent Dynamics." Richard's eyes widened. "You sold to our biggest competitor?" "I sold to a company that values innovation over ego, with a leader who sees me as an asset rather than an obstacle." She stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "The agreement will be announced tomorrow morning." As she showed him to the door, Richard paused. "For what it's worth, I always thought you were the future of Apex Nova." "Thank you, Richard," Dana replied genuinely. "But it turns out, I'm the future of something better." After he left, Dana returned to her home office and finally checked her voicemails. The progression was almost comical, from confusion to urgency to barely veiled desperation. The final message was from Marcus himself, his arrogance replaced by a thin veneer of collegiality that couldn't mask his panic. She deleted them all without responding and opened her email to find the final contract from Ardent Dynamics waiting for her signature. The Ardent Dynamics press conference was scheduled for 2 p.m., carefully timed to give financial markets a full day to react to Apex Nova's catastrophic system failure before announcing the acquisition of the patent. Dana stood backstage, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that projected confidence without ostentation. Chris approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Nervous?" he asked, handing her one. "Surprisingly, no," Dana admitted. just ready for this chapter to close and the next one to begin. The market is responding exactly as predicted, Chris informed her, showing her his tablet where Apex Nova's stock had plummeted 28% since opening. The board has called for Marcus's resignation. That didn't take long, Dina observed. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. No one wants to go down with his ship. Chris glanced at his watch. 2 minutes till we're on. Any second thoughts? Dina considered the question seriously. About selling the patent? No. About how everything unfolded? She paused. I wish it hadn't been necessary. I wish 6 years of dedication had been enough to earn respect without having to demonstrate power. Chris nodded understandingly. The tech world has never been good at valuing people over products. Then perhaps that's something we can change at Ardent, Dina suggested as they heard their names announced. They walked on stage to face a room packed with technology journalists, financial analysts, and industry insiders. Camera flashes created a strobe effect as Sarah Chen welcomed them to the podium. Ardent Dynamics is proud to announce the acquisition of the groundbreaking modular system patent from Westpoint Innovations, Sarah began, and even prouder to welcome its creator, Dina West, as our new chief advisory architect. The announcement triggered a flurry of questions, which Sarah fielded with practiced ease before inviting Dina to speak. Standing at the microphone, Dina felt the weight of attention from an industry that had often overlooked her contributions, despite her technical brilliance. Now they were hanging on her every word. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum, she began. It requires an environment where ideas are valued, where diverse perspectives are sought out rather than silenced, and where long-term vision takes precedence over quarterly profits. She paused, making eye contact with various journalists. The modular system was designed to adapt and evolve. That's what made it revolutionary. And now, with Ardent Dynamics, it will continue to evolve in ways that prioritize both technological advancement and the human experience. As the press conference continued, Dina noticed a subtle shift in how questions were directed. For the first time in her career, she wasn't being asked to justify her presence or explain basic concepts. She was being addressed as the authority she had always been. Later, as they reviewed the media coverage in Sarah's office, the headlines told the story. Apex Nova in freefall after patent bombshell. Marcus Hale resigns as tech giant faces existential crisis. Ardent Dynamics secures game-changing patent in billion-dollar deal. Dana West, the architect who owned more than anyone knew. Congratulations, Sarah said, closing her laptop. You've managed to reshape the industry landscape in less than a week. The landscape was already changing, Dina replied. I just accelerated the process. Well, your first official day isn't until Monday, but I'd appreciate your input on how we integrate your system with our existing architecture, Sarah said, rising from her desk. If you have time tomorrow, I'll be here, Dina promised. As Sarah left to attend another meeting, Dina remained in the office, gazing out at the harbor view. 6 years at Apex Nova had taught her everything about building revolutionary systems. But it had taken losing her position to teach her the most valuable lesson of all. True worth isn't determined by a company's validation. It's established by knowing exactly what you bring to the table and being willing to walk away when that isn't respected. 2 weeks later, Dina stood in her new office at Ardent Dynamics, arranging a small collection of personal items on her desk. The space was twice the size of her office at Apex Nova, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of both the harbor and the city skyline where her former employer's building stood. A knock at her open door revealed Chris, holding a small package. First-day gift, he explained, setting it on her desk. Though technically it's your 14th day, but who's counting? Dina smiled as she unwrapped it, revealing a small crystal sculpture of a phoenix. Subtle, she remarked with a raised eyebrow. I thought so. Chris grinned. How's the transition team working out? Better than expected, Dina replied. We've already identified 3 integration points that will accelerate our timeline by nearly a month. And the former Apex Nova employees who've applied to join us? Dana's expression softened. I've interviewed 8 so far. All talented, all undervalued. I've recommended hiring 6 immediately. Chris nodded approvingly. Sarah's already approved the requisitions. They'll receive offers today. A notification chimed on Dina's computer. She glanced at the screen and let out a small laugh. "What?" Chris asked. "Apex Nova just announced their new direction after securing emergency funding," she explained, turning the screen so Chris could see. "They're pivoting to consumer applications, abandoning the enterprise architecture they've spent years building. Without your system, they don't have much choice," Chris observed. "They're essentially starting from scratch." "With a significantly depleted team and tarnished reputation," Dina added, though without malice. "It will be years before they recover, if they ever do." Chris studied her curiously. "Any regrets?" Dana considered the question, looking out toward the Apex Nova building in the distance. "Not about protecting my work or joining Ardent," she said thoughtfully. "But I do regret that it came to this. So many talented people there, building remarkable things. You couldn't have predicted Marcus would force your hand," Chris reminded her. "No, but I could have been more transparent about my ownership of the patent from the beginning," Dina acknowledged. "Fear of being pushed out led me to create a safeguard that ultimately forced exactly that outcome. Yet here you are, heading a division with triple the resources and a direct line to the CEO," Chris pointed out. "Sometimes the long game works out exactly as it should." Dina's phone rang, displaying Sarah's name. "We need you in the strategy meeting," the CEO said when Dina answered. "The Singapore team has some concerns about integration timelines." "I'll be right there," Dina promised, gathering her tablet. As she and Chris walked toward the conference room, they passed a newly installed sign on the wall bearing Ardent's updated mission statement, which now included a phrase Dina had suggested: "Innovation powered by people, not despite them." She paused briefly, looking at the words that represented everything Apex Nova had failed to understand and everything Ardent was committed to upholding. It wasn't just about patents and systems. It was about recognizing that behind every technological breakthrough were human minds deserving of respect and recognition. As they entered the conference room, Dina was greeted with nods of acknowledgement and respectful attention from executives who had quickly learned to value her insight. No one questioned her authority or expertise. No one saw her as an obstacle. Here, finally, she wasn't just the architect of systems. She was a valued voice in shaping the company's future. The meeting began, and as Dina addressed the concerns of the Singapore team with clear, thoughtful solutions, she realized that her value had never changed. The only difference was that now, she was in an environment where that value was recognized without requiring a billion-dollar demonstration. That was the true victory. Not watching Apex Nova crumble or seeing Marcus forced to resign, but finding her rightful place where her contributions could flourish without constant justification. The patent had been her protection, but her knowledge and vision were her real power. And those, unlike companies or positions, could never be taken away. If you enjoyed this story of corporate justice and personal empowerment, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what you thought of Dina's journey and what other stories you'd like to hear in the future.